Natural selection is the process by which animals become adapted to their environment. However, it's often unclear how and why organisms come to be the way they are today. For example, why is it that Heliconius butterflies have such bright, colorful, striking wing color patterns? And how is it that different species of Heliconius butterflies often have almost identical wing color patterns? These butterflies were first described by the Amazonian explorer Henry Walter Bates over 150 years ago.
Henry Walter Bates was particularly interested in the butterflies, and he made a series of observations that at first seemed to challenge the theory of natural selection. He observed that very distantly related butterfly species had very similar wing patterns, so similar in fact they were extremely difficult to distinguish. He proposed that these distantly related species evolved to have similar wing patterns in order to fool predators, in order to send a signal that these were not profitable prey, and this phenomenon became known as mimicry.
Heliconius butterflies are toxic and foul-tasting to predators. Their bodies contain cyanide-based compounds which they extract from the passiflora vines they feed on as caterpillars. If a predator such as a bird tries to eat this butterfly, it will quickly learn to recognize and avoid its specific wing pattern. So any butterfly that resembles this one will have a selective advantage, as it will be avoided by predators. Even for a toxic species, it makes sense to resemble other toxic species that occur in the same area. This will increase the probability that birds will have learnt to avoid that specific colour pattern in the past. This explains why so many different Heliconius species, which are all toxic, have evolved to mimic one another. Mimicry is an adaptation, and it provides one of the most powerful and intriguing examples of natural selection.
Our research is starting to shed light on the genetic mechanisms behind how such mimicry could have evolved. We have now discovered two different mechanisms by which different species of butterflies have evolved almost identical wing color patterns. Two different species, Heliconius melpomene and Heliconius irato, mimic each other across South America. Their patterns are very similar but not identical, as we can see in these rayed forms from Colombia. When we compare the genome sequence of these butterflies, the number of differences between them tell us that these species diverged from a common ancestor around 10 million years ago, and that the wing pattern genes have evolved independently. However, we also find virtually identical color patterns between very closely related species. Another group of butterflies diverged from Heliconius melpomene around 3 million years ago and usually have quite different patterns. But one species, Heliconius timorata, has almost exactly the same red patterns as Heliconius melpomene. Unlike Heliconius irato, we think this mimicry is due to rare hybridization between Heliconius melpomene and Heliconius timorata, and that these butterflies have swapped their wing pattern genes sometime after the species split. We now have evidence for gene flow between humans and Neanderthals, and in the light of what we know from our butterflies, it's interesting to think that perhaps even we humans may have acquired beneficial genes from our close relatives in our recent evolutionary history.